right there. You should see me on the phone with a picture of Ken Gamble. Can you see that? Refresh your screen. No, that's weird. Blue shirt on. Mm-hmm. Just refresh your screen. Yep, have you got a picture of Max Walker there? You don't swear because we're on air. It's on there. It's happening now. Refresh your screen. It's right there now on the Australian Security Academy Facebook page. No worries, buddy. Okay, bye. Hi everyone, and welcome to our Friday What's Been Happening in Investigations News in Australia. I'm Mike Evans from the Australian Security Academy, and this is what's been happening this week in investigations around Australia. It has been an enormously busy week. It started last Sunday with the 60 Minutes program, where outstanding licensed investigator Ken Gamble was featured on that program over an investigation he's been doing into a sports betting scam run by notorious con man Peter Foster. And Peter Foster, it was alleged, had put out was seeking to put out a contract on the life of Ken Gamble. Now, get on the 60 Minutes program after this show today. Have a look at it tonight. Type in your search engine, Ken Gamble, Peter Foster, sports betting, and have a look at how it all comes out. Have a look at the money involved and some of the intricacies behind it. If you're looking for an investigator to handle your international investigation that's complex, high level, and involves a lot of career criminals in it, you could not go past using Ken Gamble from IFW Global. So that was our start to the week. This week was at 60 Minutes. It's a really interesting show. Some of you have been following that story on our LinkedIn program over the years, on our LinkedIn group, which is for private investigators, but that's a really interesting one. Ken's a great investigator, a great bloke. Have a look at it, and I'm sure you'll really enjoy watching that program and reading through it. IFW Global have also featured it on their website, so you can read about the history of the investigation, what Ken did during it, what he uncovered during it, the amounts of money involved in it, that sort of thing. So it's a really good read, a really good follow for the licensed private investigators out there in Australia to see Ken and what he's been up to. So don't miss that. Have a look at it. You'll really enjoy it. In other news this week, Keith Banks has released his Undercover Cop book. Now, again, you can Google this. It's called Drugs, Guns and Lies. It has its own Facebook page. Now, Keith was a Queensland police officer who went undercover originally during the height of the Queensland police corruption days back in the mid-80s. So Keith was going undercover. He was working for people he didn't even know if they were straight cops or bent cops, the ones he was working for and the ones that were controlling his undercover work. So what I am sure, I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I have ordered it, is going to be a great read for you people who are right into your undercover stuff. Get a hold of Keith Banks' book. They're raving about it on the Facebook groups around the place. Some of his past associates have read it already, and it only got released late last week. So they're always great reads, these. It really gives you insights into the very lonely world of the undercover criminal investigator. So that's come out this week. So get a copy of it, Google it, Drugs, Guns and Lies. You won't regret it. Now, last week, I copped it after my show for the thing about Quakers. Now, that is me in Melbourne outside the GPO office on the right-hand side, seated with a bunch of Quakers, and we're having a protest. Now, I used that picture and a little scenario as an example about how surveillance investigators who are seeking to work for the federal government have to have background checks done on them before they can be approved to do that work for the federal government. So that goes through the security vetting process and make sure they don't have any criminal connections or any past convictions, or they're a person that's easily bribed or coerced or swayed. All those checks are done on people. Now, I use this picture of me at a protest, and it was just a scenario. That is me, yes, with a bunch of Quakers. In between 1973 and 1977, while your grandparents were watching Countdown on TV every Sunday night, I was in a Quaker meeting house at a Quaker meeting. So I, during that time, was a practicing Quaker and guess I still am today. Max Walker went to the same Quaker school that I did. We had the same English literature teacher, which is pretty weird. He went on to become a international cricketing success. He was a gifted athlete. So, that school I went to, they were very proud of Max being there. The person who wrote the saddest Disney program you ever watched, if you watched Disneyland in the 1960s, it was an awful story movie. A lassie come home about a little boy whose dog was sold on him because they were so poor, and how after a lot of agony and pain they got him back. The person who wrote that was a Quaker. These two people who you are familiar with, The Rebel Without a Cause and Dame Judi Dench, both of them are Quakers. So, I've got no argument with Quakers, right on their side. The ethos of Quakerism is to accept all religions. Now, you don't know it, but your life has been touched absolutely positively and been enriched by a Quaker. I bet you didn't know that. If it wasn't for a Quaker, you wouldn't have this. So it was a Quaker that invented Cadbury chocolate way back in the early 1800s. So I just want to clear that up. Got no argument with them. It was just a picture and an example story. It's the only one I had of me protesting about anything. So that's that. The other thing that's come up this week, and I didn't get the video of it in time, was on one of my LinkedIn groups, a gentleman who I would invite at any stage to come on this program on a Friday afternoon and show us how it works, has got, and he's a ex-Victorian police officer, he's got a polygraph machine. Now, this polygraph machine it hooks up to a laptop, and it hooks up to the person that you are putting on the lie detector test, and it works by looking at your eyes. So that's pretty amazing. I don't know if you shut one eye, will it still work? Or you open your eyes right up like this, if it will still work. But it's a polygraph machine that just uses your eyes. Now, that's really interesting. I thought they worked on some kind of like nervous vibration or that sort of thing. And basically, people write stories and write articles about how to beat polygraph machines. Now, if you're going to beat a polygraph machine, you have to be really calm, and you have to be really, really, how could I put it, relaxed, so your nerves don't get carried away. So people say, think about a calm place. Think about a happy place. They say, think about going fishing or playing golf. Now, if I go fishing and the fish gets away, well, I'll get all upset, jump up and down and throw my fishing rod away. So I can't do that. So, it's really important that if you're going to beat a polygraph machine, that you know how to do it. And I'll come back to that later. And in the spirit of what I did last week with my Quakers, I'll show you how to beat the polygraph machine as a Hindu. All right, so that's something to look forward to. In other news this week, I have our movie of the week. Now, our movie of the week is a movie called The Interview. Now, The Interview is an Australian movie that made $500,000 at the box office. Now, I have recommended The Interview, and you can see it on my YouTube channel, as a must-watch movie for private investigators. Now, why have I done that? I mean, I have recommended a movie called Detective Downs. That's the first one we ever recommended. Absolutely, you must watch it. It's about a young man who has Down syndrome, who's a private investigator. And it's a great story. He's never had a case and he gets a case. But the reason I want you to watch it is so you can see his method of investigation. And his method of investigation is to become that person and to step into the shoes of that person. It's a really great story. They must have consulted rather widely on this when they were putting it together. So Detective Downs was our first movie of the week. Must watch. Google it. It's a Danish movie. It does come with subtitles. So make sure you watch that. Then we had our movie last week called Getting Square. Now, Getting Square, again, that was a Criminal Misconduct Commission type movie about Australian bank robbers, but there's 2 scenes in that starring David Wenham where they're really important for private investigators, so please watch that. And last week I told you about the movie Erin Brockovich, and it's really important for private investigators to watch that one. Now, the reason it's so important that private investigators actually watch that is scene 26. Now, in scene 26, Erin meets in a bar a man who has evidence of destroying documents. Now, it's the only person who witnessed what went on in the plant that poisoned the town. And he says to her, I destroyed documents while I was at the Hinkley plant. Now, this is a complete surprise because they've had a town meeting and no one will cooperate with them. So Erin runs outside and she rings her boss, and her boss is a lawyer, and she says, what will I do? And what he says to her are the words that enabled them to get the information that won the biggest case in civil investigation history in the world, and that still is today. Go to scene 26 of Erin Brockovich, all right? It's not a long scene or a big ask, and listens to his advice. And what his advice is in that section of the movie, in that scene, is don't pepper him with questions. That's the witness. Don't put him off, all right? Let him tell his story. People like to tell his story. And he also said, get a deposition, which is a statement. So they were the boss's words. So Erin went back into the pub where the man was, and she basically spoke to him. He agreed to give her a statement. And as a result of that statement and the information he gave them, they won their case. So watch scene 26. It's a beauty. It's a must-see movie. Now, this week in the interview, if you Google the interview and have a look at that, it's an Australian movie, and it's just 1 hour and 40 minutes about a record of interview. And it's a young man who's flat broke, accused of murdering a couple of members of his family. And in that, they go through all the techniques of records of interview. So it's really a worthwhile watch as a licensed private investigator. I'm not recommending that you copy their tactics or anything like that. What I am recommending is you watch it because it's Australian. It follows the process. And the consultant on it was Gordon Davie. Now, Gordon Davie was the police officer who investigated the Russell Street bombing. And he also investigated the bombing of the Turkish embassy. And if you Google Gordon Davie, he's a police officer, ex-police officer, sorry, who actually goes around and he interviews people in jail who are accused of murdering young children. And he does it for free for their families. He's quite a genuine person who tries to help people. Gordon Davie is his name. He's an ex-Victorian police officer, and there's some really good reads about the type of work he does. He was the consultant on this movie, The Interview. So The Interview has some bad cops in it, and it has all Australian actors. Google it. I'll put a link to it later on YouTube and below this, so you can get a direct link to it, but it's a must-watch movie. Next week, in that movie section of this Friday afternoon program, I'm going to get you to look at the movie Chicago. Now, you've all seen it, all right? And you think, what's Renee Zellweger and that other girl got to do with private investigators? It's the second last song in the movie that's important. And it's got Richard Gere in that one. So I'll tell you why next week that's important for private investigators. And I'm sure you'll agree. It's something that you must watch. I asked for feedback on from people last week about the program, and a lot of people gave me a lot of feedback. And the reason I asked for feedback is I didn't know what people wanted to see or what they wanted to hear during this program. So I got suggestions on this, putting links in and stuff like that. And that was great. I even got a letter from my younger self. It said, don't rabbit on and be boring when teaching investigators, signed my younger self. So, you know, I got that to make sure, I guess, from my younger self to make this interesting. Now, there's no way I can make it interesting anymore because I'm just too old and too out of touch. Really, if you look at my investigation career and I start teaching people investigations, it goes like this. Take a look at me, I'm yesterday's hero. Yesterday's hero. That's So nobody wants to listen to me rave on and talk about how I used to chase Ned Kelly and the Horse Squad back in 1822. What they want to do is they want to meet the proper private investigators that are out there. And we're starting at the top today. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Kai. Hi, Kai.
Hi, Mike. Hi, everyone. And,
you're really pleased to be here, aren't you?
That film clip.
All right, Kai, where are you based? Where are you based, Kai?
I'm based.
Where do you operate from?
I'm based in Brisbane, in sunny Queensland. I work out of home a lot with my husband and my two teenage kids.
Fantastic. What sort of investigations do you do, Kai?
Mike, I'm a freelance private investigator, and I've established a company called Grey Matters Investigations, and we offer a full suite of investigative services from surveillance to insurance, corporate, and private work too.
Fantastic. That's great. All right. You do a little service where you can help people with their internet history, stuff like that too, don't you?
Well, one of the things I'm currently studying at the moment, Mike, is open source intelligence, or it's called OSINT in the trade, and that's actually the practice of digital investigation techniques. So that can be very helpful in doing background checks on people, investigating fraud cases, missing persons. But yes, it can also be helpful if you're perhaps on the other side of the fence and want to do something about your digital footprint.
Fantastic. All right, Kai. Your background, what did you do before you became a private investigator, Kai?
Well, before I was a private investigator, I became quite interested in digital privacy and security issues. And so I worked in that space for a while. I worked in an emerging technology startup for a while. And prior to that, I spent some 22 years working inside government.
And what did you do in government?
I did various roles inside government at that middle management sort of level, and various projects. But I guess one of the really big insights I bring out of all that government experience is that familiarity with the principles and the actual practices of code of conduct in large, complex organisations with interesting cultural dynamics.
That's fantastic, Kai. It's process, policy and procedure governs everything within a government department. And this is what I try and convey to my private investigators and my government investigators. The criteria is set for everything that happens in government with a process, policy and procedure. And if someone is inappropriately behaving, sexual harassment, racial discrimination, that sort of thing, the first criteria you go to is the sexual harassment process or policy or whatever it is. We as investigators, we're not advocates, we're not police officers, we're not interrogators. We go and see, when we're doing investigations into improper conduct, inappropriate behaviour, sexual harassment, racial discrimination, whatever, inappropriate use of resources, we go and see at the starting point what that process, policy and procedure, that's the foundation, and you just hit it right on the head. I'm really pleased that you mentioned that. Your qualifications, Kai, apart from your Certificate 3 in Investigative Services, what are they?
Well, hopefully this week I'll have my general insurance code of practice training, but I also have a master's and a bachelor's degree in science.
Fantastic. All right. So anyone around Australia that's looking for factual investigations or surveillance, Kai, they can contact you?
Yes, they can contact me, and I'm always open to cooperation and collaboration. So, you know, drop me a line. I'm on LinkedIn or through my website there. And just, you know, drop me a line and say hello. Maybe there's something I can help you with, or maybe you have an area of expertise that you can help me with.
Fantastic. So let's have a look at your website. There it is.
That's it.
What do you call, Guy?
GreyMatterInvestigations.com.
Why did you decide on that name?
I'm very interested in the grey rather than the wider things. And I think that's sort of something that drew me into the investigation space.
Fantastic. That's great. And you've been to an actual Australian Security Academy course live, haven't you?
I have.
Yeah. What did you learn there?
What did I learn in there?
Yeah.
I would have to kill you.
I've never seen a student take more notes in 19 years than you took over those 3 days in Brisbane, Guy.
A very informative session. It was a 3-day session, I think it was. So yeah, a very intense information session over 3 days, delivered by some very skillful presenters that are quite entertaining, and I would highly recommend it.
You had Noel Lee, Pat Flynn. There were several people in that program, weren't there? Yeah, all right. That was about this time last year.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, Kyla, thank you for being our very first person to put a hand up and agree to be on Meet the Private Investigator. It's been wonderful to have you. Your smiles lit up the screen for everybody around the country. It's been great. Thanks, Kai. And I'll pass on anyone that's seeking your services in Brisbane, your details, and connect you up. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay. All right. You want to be on Meet the Investigator? Get in touch with me. Send me an email. Get in touch with me on Facebook. And if you've got 3 to 4 minutes on a Friday afternoon, we'll get you into the program. So we go back to our polygraph machine. Now, here's an example of a person on a lie detector. You've probably seen this too. It's not one of my movies that's for private investigators, but let's have a look at Robert De Niro and Ben Stiller on their lie detector. Every future father-in-law should have one. So how do you beat that lie detector, the one that's looking at your eyes or the one that's looking for your nerves? You've got to be really, really relaxed. You can't just fake that. You really have to set yourself up for it. So, you know, you can't be thinking about going fishing because that's too upsetting. Playing golf, that's too upsetting. Knitting can be too upsetting if you get a row wrong or something like that. So I'll guide you through how you should do it. To beat any lie detector, you've got to become basically a, how could I put it, Hindu version of Chuck Norris. That's how you got to do it. So here we go. All right, starting at your Atman, bring your prana through your kundalini and get it into your root chakra, then take it into your sacral chakra, into your solar plexus, your heart chakra, your throat chakra, then into the brain chakra, and this is really important, your third eye. Then take the prana up to your crown chakra, and this will put you in a complete state of bliss, joy, and ananda. So when you get asked that question that Ben Stiller just got asked by his father and future father-in-law, you can turn into the Hindu Chuck Norris. Where you find him? There you go. You just learned how to beat a lie detector test. So practice your meditations, practice your chakras, and you'll beat it every time. I didn't have time to put in Job of the Week. If you're looking for Job of the Week this week, go to the Australian Security Academy corporate, private and investigation job sites on Facebook. Please go to that and have a look at it. You'll see, I think we put up around about 9 different jobs this week. We do include government investigation jobs because people gravitate up to those, and they do get quite a bit of experience as a private investigator, and they meet government departments all the time. So next week's movie of the week, Chicago. If you'd like to be on Meet the Investigator, get in touch with me. I'm Mike Evans from the Australian Security Academy. That's the investigation news this week. We'll see you then. Bye.